Hey everybody, it's your friend and your guy and your favorite YouTuber who's filming this on a Tuesday, Gardiner, the Linux Gamer. This video is brought to you, as always, by my 149 amazing patrons over on Patreon, including the support of Nima Panahi. Nima, my dude, thank you so much for your support. It is truly humbling. And I got that package you sent. If you like this video, make sure you hit that like button. It really helps the show out. You can also hit that subscribe button and ring that notification bell to stay up to date to the content that YouTube doesn't want you to see, because they don't promote my stuff anymore. They just, they want you to watch the night show clips. If you're tired of that, though, and you don't need to hit that subscribe button, you can also head over to LBRY, beta.lbry.tv/@thelinuxgamer, and it's a cool site. It's a really cool place. It's totally distributed, and my content's there available for free. Today, we are talking about DNS over HTTPS. This isn't going to be some conspiracy theory baloney, all right? This is going to be just the facts. We're going to talk about what DNS is, what HTTPS is, and why you don't need to marry the two, okay? And in fact, why it's probably actually a bad idea to marry the two. So if you're not familiar, DNS is the domain name system, okay? So DNS is a way of translating domain names into IP addresses. If you don't have an IP address, you can't access a website. So the domain name system exists so that it can translate, google.com to 8.8.8.8 or whatever their actual IP address is. I think that's correct. But there's also other things like DuckDuckGo. If you type in DuckDuckGo into your browser's URL bar, when you hit enter, it sends off a request to a DNS server and says, hey, what's the IP of duckduckgo.com? And then the DNS service will reply 23.21.193.169. And then your browser's like, got it. Let's go out there and get that information. And then that information is sent to your computer. But there's a little bit of a caveat there. If you've ever had to go in and specify a static IP for your computer, or you've gone into your router settings, you'll know that there's a field for you to input a custom DNS server, and that is actually extremely useful. Typically, if you're assigned a dynamic IP address from your ISP, what will happen is you end up using the domain name server of your ISP. That has its pluses and minuses, but when I was a kid, we used a Time Warner's Roadrunner, right? Internet. And if the domain name doesn't actually exist, instead of getting a blank screen, the ISP would send back some ISP branded search results that, and while it might be argued that it could be useful, that's really not what you want. But there are some ways of actually specifying some DNS servers and bypassing your ISP's DNS, or there are many reasons you might want to modify your DNS settings. Actually, it's pretty easy to spoof domain name resolution as well. Whether you're using Linux or Mac OS or Windows, you have this thing on your computer. It's called a hosts file. And the host file is a way of specifying routing for specific domain names. So, for example, if I wanted to, I could type in my host file lunduke.com, and I could actually change what IP address the browser or any piece of software on my computer would receive when it looked up the domain name lunduke.com. And that's actually really powerful and really cool, because that means that you can not just modify sites that exist, but for your local machine or on your local network, you can create domain names that you didn't purchase. That's super great. You should be able to do that. It's just part of, as a web developer, I do that all the time. Now, keep in mind also that DNS is fully unencrypted. There's no encryption on it. It's most of the time it's just plain text. The queries are done out in the open. Anyone listening on your traffic can figure out what domains you're actually looking up. What is HTTPS? Well, HTTPS, or Hypertext Transport Protocol Secure, that's what the S stands for, is a means of mitigating the in the clear communication. Without HTTPS, all the internet traffic that you send and receive would be unencrypted. So the S means that, it's secure. Now, the standard HTTP protocol didn't include any kind of encryption whatsoever. So it was possible to intercept and modify and then man-in-the-middle attack with standard HTTP. HTTPS has been designed to kind of prevent this kind of man-in-the-middle attack. So if you've ever been to a website with HTTPS enabled, your browser will actually remember that the site is only served through HTTPS. And if you ever try to access it outside that secure connection, the browser will throw an error. This is excellent as it can mitigate man-in-the-middle attacks, and that's something that you want. For example, if I changed my hosts file to point DuckDuckGo at another different IP address, well, the server that I'm pointing it to isn't going to be delivering the same verified SSL certificates from DuckDuckGo, and your browser will probably be unhappy about that. And this is great. We want HTTPS to behave like this. And traditionally, HTTPS sits on top of the DNS system in order to encrypt your web traffic. So in the stack of things, your DNS lookups are unencrypted. They're in the clear. And so if you say you want to go to duckduckgo.com, well, then anyone who's listening on your network traffic is going to be able to see you've looked up DuckDuckGo's IP address. But anything you transfer between you and DuckDuckGo after that point, well, then that is actually going to be encrypted by HTTPS, generally speaking. So DNS is often unencrypted. And I say often because there are some securing features that you can implement or use, but generally speaking, it's pretty much an open party. So to summarize all of this, DNS is often unencrypted, and it's used to look up the IP address of a domain name. Traffic after this is usually encrypted with HTTPS. It encrypts all the content that you load from that site, the pages that you load after this, and any forms that you might submit. All of that is going to be encrypted. Your ISP can usually see what DNS requests you are looking up, even if you're not using their servers. They can monitor this. But they can't see what you're doing on the pages that you're loaded after HTTPS has taken over. They can see the size, some of the metadata, but not really the content that you've actually transferred back and forth. Okay, now we're on the same page. Let's talk about DNS over HTTPS. And I mean, honestly, if you've been following along right now, you probably can guess what DNS over HTTPS means. And from now on, we're going to call it DOH because saying DNS over HTTPS is kind of a mouthful. So DOH encrypts your DNS requests through the HTTPS layer. The DOH server actually receives your encrypted request, and then it processes it, does whatever it needs to, encrypts it, and sends it back to your browser. And honestly, I think that's great. I mean, it prevents your ISP and other actors who might be listening in, it prevents them from actually seeing where you're going or what you're looking up, what domains you're looking up on the internet. But they can still see that you are, or at least maybe surmise that you are communicating with a DOH server. So there are a few issues here, and the first one is that no major operating system actually supports DOH natively yet, or at least as far as I know. And because DOH is so new, you might expect that operating systems are going to lag behind a little bit implementing this. But what that means is that web browsers have to implement their own version of DOH, and that can lead to some bad news. See, the issue becomes that if you want to actually have control over your DNS lookups, as we traditionally have, then it's not going to work. If you use a standard, if you use one of these bespoke DOH implementations that come with your browser, well, you're not going to have the control that you're used to having on your network. And I think that there are many legitimate reasons to want to do something like this, to want to have control over DNS lookups. As I said previously, as a web developer, it's really handy to be able to create local fake domains. Being able to host websites from my local server on a fake domain. That is super useful. I do it all the time. But that's not to say that this is all bad, right? There are many reasons that you might want to use something like DOH. The first thing is resisting censorship, of course. Many oppressive governments require their ISPs to implement blocking technology on websites they don't like. And generally speaking, these ISPs that are required by law to censor the internet institute some kind of DNS censorship. If you can resolve IP addresses privately without your ISP knowing where you're trying to go, well, then you're going to have a better chance of bypassing censorship. So I guess it's fair to say that there are aggravating and mitigating factors when it comes to the case against DOH. And I want you guys to understand that this is not me saying that this is exactly how it is. This is just my interpretation, my understanding of DOH and why I think it's bad. So the fact is, this technology was developed in collaboration with a bunch of different companies. Mozilla was one of them, and Google was another. And I think personally, Google's primary motivating factor here was advertising. You've probably heard of ad blockers before, right? Most people have. Usually they take the form of a browser extension that actively blocks connections to advertiser networks. And ad blockers are great. They often reduce unnecessary bloat in websites. They protect your privacy by preventing trackers and things that ad networks use to market more effectively towards you. And you know, there are many excellent choices when it comes to ad blocking extensions for your browser. But there's also this thing called the Pi hole. Have you ever heard of this? The Pi hole works with a Raspberry Pi. You connect it to your network, and it acts like a DNS server for your network. It sits as a trusted middleman on your network, and what it does is the developers of Pi-hole actually maintain lists of advertising networks. And when a website that you have open requests the IP address of an ad network, well guess what happens? The Pi-hole just kind of sends that ad request off into oblivion. And where Google recently has been actively fighting against the efficacy of browser extensions to block ads, well, they don't have a lot of control when it comes to DNS servers on your local network, at least until now. And see, the problem is DOH deliberately bypasses all of your computers and your local network's DNS settings. It short circuits this, even bypassing the Pi-hole that you might have on your network. And you know, on your computer, you can turn off DOH. You know, if you have it activated in Firefox, which is currently available, well, then, you know, you can turn that off. In Chrome, I don't know if it's implemented in Chrome yet. I don't use Chrome, but at least for the time being, you can probably, you know, toggle it on and off with a switch. But what about embedded devices? What about like IoT? What happens about the apps that are on your phone? Like if you have a Pi-hole on your network and you're connected to your network with on Wi-Fi, then ads that are requested by apps on your phone that you don't have the same level of control over, well, then those get sent off into oblivion too. So if you want to maintain control over the devices that are on your network, well, then DOH really is kind of a big deal. It's kind of a huge problem. I think that is bad news, that we're moving in a direction against the common user's best interest, against the common user's ability to manage their own digital destiny. If you want to maintain control over the devices that are on your network and they're using DOH, which, let's be honest, they're probably going to start doing that, well, that's bad. I mean, that DOH is going to prevent you from having that level of control. That's bad. That's horrible. And honestly, I think that it's kind of by design. I don't know if you guys noticed, but I am actually getting ready to move. There's no more stuff up on the walls here. A lot of the stuff is already packed up and ready to go. I'm moving to Kentucky, and I am so freaking excited, you guys. You guys don't even know. I need to give a special shout out to my patrons, without whom I wouldn't be able to do any of this. My patrons have made a huge impact in my life. The thing is, my patrons have empowered me to be able to make decisions solely in what is in the best interest of the channel, and for that I am so grateful. If you want to help support this show, if you believe in what I do here, then you can head over to patreon.com/thelinuxgamer or LibrePay, LibrePay.com/thelinuxgamer, and we have rewards over here on Patreon that get your name up on the screen. You get a shout out at the end of a video or two, and you know what? You'll also have my eternal gratitude. But I think that's going to do it for now. I want to know what you guys think about this, because I really am torn about DOH. I think that it's a cool technology, but it also does a lot of harm, or has the potential to do a lot of harm. So let me know in the comments down below what you think about this. I think that that's going to wrap this video up, though. If you believe in what I do, you can support the show on Patreon or LBRY. You can pick up one of these freaking sweet t-shirts. I designed this myself, and this really helps the show out as well. But no matter what you do, whether you hit that like button or share this video with your friends, don't forget to subscribe to see more from me, the Linux Gamer. Peace out from Maine, and I'll see you guys on the other side.